In tonight's nightmare, Vince and Freddy thought they had found the perfect scam, taking from people too old, too trusting, or too lonely to notice. It was easy money, until one routine theft led them to something that should have remained locked away forever. A forgotten tape, an aging man with too many secrets, and a lesson learned far too late. Some things are hidden for a reason. Welcome to Nightmares in Small Doses. I'm probably about to confess to a crime. No, several crimes. Fuck. I shouldn't say anything, but I will. There had to be proof, a testimony of what really happened. If I could go back, I would never have robbed that old son of a bitch. I had always been a thief, always looking for the easiest way out and cutting corners whenever possible. I had always been that guy at school who barely scraped by and never gave a damn about any of it. When school ended, I was finally free. Except I didn't want a normal job. So I started selling weed to make some cash. At the time, it was more than enough to support myself, and I stayed in that line of work until I found something even more profitable: robbing old people. My friend Freddy and I helped elderly people by delivering meals and taking care of basic needs they could no longer handle on their own, and whenever we discovered where they kept their money, we robbed them. Simple. The best part was that we got paid to do those things. It was a job for a company that provided services for the elderly, where they paid to have people come every week to help them with basic tasks they could no longer do themselves. Yeah, it was hard work, the kind of work I'd spent my whole life trying to avoid, except this one paid a salary and came with a pretty hefty bonus, if you know what I mean. It was worth it. Like I said earlier, I'd always been a thief. I always tried to make money while doing as little as possible. With our scheme, we did work, sure. Sometimes it even got exhausting, but we still managed to take advantage of it. While providing those assistance services to the elderly, Freddy and I had time to figure out where they kept their money. While one of us distracted the old person by helping with something, like delivering lunch, doing their laundry, or even putting away groceries, the other quickly searched the house without drawing attention. We had this whole scheme planned out and running smoothly. When the old people realized they had been robbed, they never suspected us. We were the nice young guys who came by every couple of days to help them out for an hour. Some of them probably still hadn't even realized they'd been robbed. Yeah, I know. How could I do something like that? I know that's what you're asking yourselves. In this world, you either eat or get eaten, and I preferred to be the one doing the eating, no matter the cost. To be honest, those old people had already lived their lives, already enjoyed them. It was my turn to enjoy mine. What did they even need the money for? Most of them could barely get out of a chair, so it was better for me to enjoy that money for my own things. Where everything went horribly wrong was with old man Jepson. While Freddy and I were helping him with basic services, we found a small safe hidden inside his wardrobe. If there was money hidden anywhere in that house, it had to be there. The safe was old, still fitted with one of those mechanical combination dials. That didn't stop us from trying. If anything, it only made us more excited to rob it. Freddy and I had spent months studying how to open those kinds of safes through information and videos we found online. It ended up becoming just another skill for our schemes. When we finally felt confident enough to go through with the robbery, we got to work. And that was exactly what happened. We felt ready to open that safe, and that's what we did. While I put away the food old man Jepson had asked us to buy, Freddy stayed upstairs trying to crack the safe. Old man Jepson sat in an armchair watching television. He was around 80 years old and wore a mask connected to an oxygen tank to help him breathe. I knew very little about him, other than the fact that he had fought in the Vietnam War and had neither a wife nor children. If I'd wanted to know more, I could have asked. I bet those old people would talk without hesitation just to enjoy the company, but I honestly didn't give a shit about them. I didn't care about them or their stories. I only wanted their money, nothing else. I had just finished putting away the last of the groceries we'd bought for old man Jepson when Freddy came downstairs looking a little stressed. "We've got a problem, Vince," he whispered to me. "The old man only has a VHS tape in the safe." I was confused. What the hell did he mean there was no money? Who had a safe and didn't keep money in it? "What? A VHS tape?" I whispered back, completely confused, still trying to process what had just happened. "Yeah, and I couldn't find money anywhere else either," he said worriedly. We had prepared for so long just to open that safe, and there was nothing valuable inside. A VHS tape. But if it was locked inside a safe, then it had to be worth something, so I decided right then that we should take it anyway. Maybe it really was valuable and we could sell it online. eBay might have made us a fortune from that thing, but at the time, I wasn't even close to convinced it was worth anything. I was just trying to stay optimistic. As they say, hope is the last thing to die. "Bring the tape anyway and let's get out of here," I said, disappointed, wanting to be miles away from that place. Freddy quickly went to get the tape while I pretended to busy myself with something else before we left. I was pissed off. All that work for nothing. Who the hell didn't keep money in a safe? Old man Jepson had to have money hidden somewhere, but it was out of our reach. A few minutes later, Freddy came back. He nodded at me, letting me know we could leave. We said goodbye to old man Jepson and walked out of that house. Luckily, he had been our last client of the day, because after that failure, I didn't have the patience to go to another old person's house. The worst part was ending the day empty-handed. A few hours later, Freddy and I met up at my apartment. I had gone to my mother's house to get a VHS player so we could watch whatever was on the tape. I hoped it was some rare movie, or maybe a hugely popular film like Star Wars that could be worth a lot of money. Freddy brought 2 six-packs of beer. We started drinking before I even looked at the tape. "That old bastard really screwed us over," I said, still pissed off about what had happened. "Let me see the tape." "Tell me about it," Freddy muttered irritably as he handed me the tape. It was literally just a normal VHS tape. The only difference was that it wasn't labeled. Back in the day, VHS tapes usually had a white strip where people wrote down the contents of the tape so they could identify what was on it. This one had nothing. It was completely black. I couldn't stop wondering what could possibly be on that tape for old man Jepson to keep it locked inside a safe. We were about to find out. I opened another beer and inserted the tape into the player. The classic image of vertical colored bars appeared for about 3 seconds. Then footage of a forest came on. We were seeing the perspective of someone walking through the woods. It was nighttime. The only thing lighting up the forest was the camera light. It stayed like that for around a minute. Just someone walking through the woods until a woman tied to the trunk of a tree appeared. "Jesus Christ!" Freddy shouted, jolting in shock. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I was just as horrified by what I was seeing. The woman tied to the tree was half naked. Her clothes were torn, covered in scratches and some blood. She looked malnourished and dehydrated. The camera moved closer to her, and we could see her wounds and the fragile state she was in more clearly. I'll admit it was already getting hard to keep looking at the television. I wanted to look away, but I kept watching despite how uncomfortable it made me feel. The camera pulled away from the woman and was placed on a nearby rock, pointed toward her, tied to the tree. A few seconds later, the person who had been holding the camera the entire time stepped into frame and stared directly at it. "No fucking way," Freddy said, unable to believe what he was seeing. "It's Jepson," I whispered, still in shock. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. Jepson stared at the camera as if making sure it was positioned correctly. The Jepson standing there in front of us wasn't the old Jepson we knew, the one who needed a breathing mask and could barely walk. This was a younger Jepson, about 30 years younger, much healthier than the broken old man we knew. I started getting scared. I didn't like what might happen next. I sensed Freddy felt the same way as me, but I didn't even look at him. Our eyes were glued to the television. Jepson began moving away from the camera and approached the motionless woman tied to the tree. He started sniffing her body like an animal, then began licking her. He mainly licked her wounds. I was disgusted by what I was seeing and terrified of what was coming next. Out of nowhere, Jepson sank his teeth into the woman's shoulder. Blood started pouring from the wound. He tore a chunk out of her shoulder with his teeth. His mouth was covered in blood. Something came out of her. I couldn't tell what it was, but she was being drained, and Jepson was receiving it. He looked more alive. I can't explain any better what I saw. The woman became all shriveled up, like a deflated, inflatable doll. I was completely horrified. I had never seen anything like that before, not even in movies. The worst part was that it was real. 100% real. That made me even more sickened. I wanted to throw up, but I managed to hold it in. Jepson walked toward the camera and stepped behind it. He grabbed something we couldn't see because it was behind the camera. A moment later, he stepped back into frame carrying a small red canister. I immediately realized what it was. A gasoline can. And I realized what he was about to do with it. He slowly approached the woman, who was still tied to the tree, and poured the liquid from the red canister over her. I knew it was gasoline, and I knew he was going to burn her. When he finished pouring gasoline over the woman and the tree, Jepson walked back toward the camera. He picked it up and once again approached what remained of the woman's lifeless, shriveled body, soaked in gasoline. When he stood face to face with her, he stayed there for a few seconds, as if savoring what he had done before destroying the evidence. Since Jepson was holding the camera, Freddy and I were seeing the woman from his perspective. We could clearly see what he had done to that poor woman. It looked as if all the flesh had disappeared from her body, leaving behind only skin and bones. It was horrible to look at. That image would probably stay burned into my brain for the rest of my life. Jepson seemed to search for something in his pocket. He pulled out his hand, holding a lighter. He lit it and threw it at the tree where what remained of that woman hung. Within milliseconds, the tree burst into flames, and in seconds, both the tree and the woman were consumed by fire. Jepson stepped back slightly from the burning tree without ever turning the camera away. He kept it pointed at the flames. I had to admit there was some kind of morbid beauty in that burning tree. But I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened before, or stop feeling disgusted, dirty because of what we had witnessed. After standing there watching the burning tree for a while, the image started filling with static noise, and then the picture froze. That meant the tape had reached the end. Freddy and I stared at that final frame without saying a word for several minutes. What we had just watched was disturbing, even traumatic. The worst part of it all was that we had witnessed a macabre, morbid, and bizarre murder committed by someone we saw and helped regularly. Old man Jepson, who could now barely walk and barely breathe, had once gone around killing people and filming his bizarre murders. And he had kept it locked inside a safe. He considered that VHS tape his most valuable possession. That thought only made me feel even more unsettled. What the hell had we gotten ourselves into? That was all I could think before finally breaking the silence. We have to put the tape back in the safe, like nothing ever happened, I said fearfully, worried that old man Jepson might have already noticed it was missing. I've got a better idea, Freddy said thoughtfully. Why don't we blackmail the old bastard instead? Money in exchange for the tape. I have to admit, Freddy was basically like a twin brother to me. That's why we got along so well and thought the same way, like thieves. We might have had different parents, but we were incredibly alike in personality, in the way we thought and carried out our schemes. But for the first time, I didn't like that idea. After watching that tape, I was scared of Old Man Jepson. Really scared. No, we can't. Did you see what he did to that woman? I said, trying to convince him. Yeah, but he's old now. It's different. Besides, he practically owes us money after this screw-up. Don't count me in. If you want to blackmail that old bastard, go ahead, but leave me out of it, I said. Come on, Vince. He's not going to do anything. No, don't count me in. Okay, suit yourself. We'll do it your way then. No point in doing it alone, he said, sounding a little disappointed. I was relieved that he had given up on the idea. Old Man Jepson was clearly dangerous, so getting involved in more schemes with him was a terrible idea. I intended never to see Old Man Jepson again after returning the tape. I couldn't look at him the same way after discovering his darkest secret. And to be honest, after what I'd seen, I felt like I would always have to stay on alert because I believed he could kill me at any moment. The next day was normal, or at least it seemed normal, but inside I was a complete mess the entire time. I couldn't stop thinking about that tape and about what Old Man Jepson, much younger in those recordings, had done. I barely slept because I couldn't stop picturing that drained woman hanging from the tree. The anxiety kept building whenever I thought about having to return the tape the following day. Part of me desperately wanted that day to come so I could finally get rid of the tape and never see Old Man Jepson again in my life. Another part of me was terrified of looking at him again. Then D-Day finally arrived. I couldn't think about anything else. I can't speak for Freddy, but I think he was nervous too, and that tape had affected him as well. We had to return the tape no matter what. When we arrived at Old Man Jepson's house, we pretended everything was normal. We let ourselves in since we had keys. Old Man Jepson sat in his armchair watching television like always. Hello, Mr. Jepson. How are you today? I asked with my usual smile. I know you two little shits stole my tape, he said immediately, without even greeting us or trying to hide it. His tone was sinister. I froze. I was completely terrified. He knew. Fuck. It was the worst possible scenario. Mr. Jepson, there must be some I started nervously, completely stumbling over my words until he interrupted me. Shut up. I know damn well it was you two who stole the tape, he said firmly in a threatening tone. Now tell me, did you enjoy what you saw? He smiled in a sinister way. I regretted stealing that tape so much. If only I could go back. But it was already too late. Freddy pulled the tape out of the small bag he was carrying and stepped closer to Old Man Jepson, irritated. He stood very close to him, while Jepson remained seated in his armchair. You want your tape back, you sick old fart? Then you're going to have to pay up first. $10,000 cash for the tape, otherwise. I'll hand this over to the police, Freddy said without hesitation, without any nerves, just pure confidence. Old Man Jepson burst out laughing. Then hand it over to the police, and when they ask how the tape ended up in your possession, what are you going to say? That it fell from the sky or that you stole it? Old Man Jepson said with a sarcastic tone in his voice. This blackmail stunt Freddy had pulled at the last second was an act of desperation. I admired his courage, but Old Man Jepson didn't seem intimidated, not even a little. That was a very bad sign. Freddy grabbed Old Man Jepson by the collar of his shirt and pulled his face close to his own. They were less than a foot apart. Listen to me, you old piece of shit. I don't give a shit if I stole the tape and the police finds out. They'll see what kind of sick shit you've done if you don't give us the money. I swear Freddy was saying confidently, irritation clear in his voice, when old man Jepson suddenly lunged forward and bit his nose, cutting him off mid-sentence. It caught me completely off guard. I froze, speechless while it happened. Old man Jepson had his teeth sunk into Freddy's nose. Blood sprayed and poured everywhere. Freddy screamed in agony. Then old man Jepson ripped Freddy's nose clean off, and even more blood gushed out. Jepson's face was drenched in blood. Freddy collapsed to his knees with a hole in his face where his nose had been, and something came out of him as if he were being drained. And old man Jepson was receiving it, just like what had happened to the woman in the tape. When it stopped, Freddy collapsed onto the floor, completely shriveled up, leaving behind nothing but skin and bones. He looked like a deflated inflatable doll. Old man Jepson looked slightly younger than he had 5 minutes earlier. It was as if he had regained another 5 years of life. Old man Jepson looked at me with a sinister smile. "You're next," he said. His face was completely covered in blood, and his eyes seemed to glow yellow. Adrenaline pumped through my veins at full force. I didn't even think. In a panic, the moment he said that, I immediately ran for the stairs leading to his bedroom, where we had stolen the tape. That was the problem. I should have run straight out the front door, but unfortunately, that's not what I did. It was a decision made on impulse, fueled by desperation, panic, and stress. I ran up the stairs in seconds, taking 2 steps at a time. I felt like I chugged 2 or 3 cans of energy drink. Right after that, I burst into his bedroom and slammed the door behind me. Without wasting a second, I shoved every piece of furniture he had in the room in front of the door. Not long after, old man Jepson reached the bedroom door. He tried to open it but couldn't. He slammed his fists against it like a madman. "You think you can escape me? Don't forget, you're the one trapped in here with me, not the other way around," he screamed. "Go fuck yourself, you piece of shit, old man," I shouted back, once again on impulse. "I managed to live for more than 200 years without anyone ever discovering me, and you think some sewer rat like you is going to bring me down?" Old man Jepson screamed from the other side of the door, madness creeping into his voice. "I drained your friend's soul and life force, and sooner or later you'll be next. It's only a matter of time." I said nothing. I stayed perfectly still, terrified, leaning against the furniture I'd shoved in front of the door to stop him from getting in and killing me. "You're going to be the last person whose life force I drain, and then I'll finally be able to die in peace," he said angrily, as if Freddy and I had interrupted some kind of plan. In truth, we had. That was when I realized that somehow he drained people's life force to regain years of his own life. The pieces slowly started coming together. He wanted to die naturally. He was tired of living, but we had ruined his plans. That tape served as a souvenir for him to relive his bloody and morbid past. Maybe he even masturbated while watching it. Maybe it was the only thing that still excited him. I didn't know for sure. That was just a theory. The only thing I knew with certainty was that he had killed many more people, and I had no idea how many. He was basically a serial killer, and the most successful one in the history of the planet. No one had ever discovered him except Freddy and me, purely by accident. I didn't even know if he was human or some kind of supernatural entity feeding on that life force to survive longer. But none of that mattered at that moment. The only thing that mattered was getting out of there alive. How? I still didn't know. That's why I'm writing this while hiding in old man Jepson's bedroom as he tries to force his way inside. I already heard him grabbing tools and other objects to break down the door. Sooner or later, he's going to get in. I already called 911, desperate for help. It's the only way I'm getting out of here alive. Now all that's left is to wait for the police and pray they don't arrive too late. Thank you for joining me for another dose of nightmares. If you enjoyed the story, be sure to subscribe and leave a like, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you'd like even more stories to keep you awake at night, consider joining my Patreon, where you can read and listen to exclusive nightmares you won't find anywhere else. Until next time, happy nightmares.